Hello, my name is Adrian Hopwood. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration on how to paint faces, mainly using oils. Piece I'm going to use is the Magua from Mitch's Military Models. It's taken from a film, Last of the Mohicans, based on the actor Wes Studi. The basic idea behind this is big enough for you to see, but if you use smaller brushes then you should be able to do quite a small face, even down to 1/35 scale for going with AFVs. This is a resin kit. Say kit, it's one piece, couple of feathers. It's not going to tax you to put together. I've not even bothered putting the feathers on because this is just about doing a face. Before I go any further, can you hear me all right? Yeah? Because I can talk louder if you want. Someone stands at the front and says pardon, I'll kill them. Right. So, the way I paint is relatively simple. I'll use two main colours for this on the oils. One is titanium white, one is Mars brown. And from that you should be able to get a whole range of skin colours that you can then tint, put washes on once it's dry. But the whole idea is to get the basics of the colours in place. That's had a very basic primer coat. It doesn't really matter about the colour, but this is a mix of flesh tone and white, just to keep it relatively pale. It's mixed with isopropyl alcohol. That will make it grab onto the resin and give you a good base for that.
Is that acrylic paint then?
That's acrylic paint. So the oils can go straight over that. The wonderful thing about oils is they don't dry very quickly. So if you're not quite happy with it, you can put it in the fridge. Go to work the next day, come back and still mess about with it, still blend the paint, it's still wet. If you want to speed the drying time up, then if you put it in a drying cupboard, basically I've got a kitchen cupboard with a 40 watt light bulb in it, stick that in and it'll be dried the next morning. As for the paints, that's the two colours I'm going to use. Mars brown is a fairly reddish brown. If I was painting something small like these, I would just use the Mars brown straight on the flesh tone. The bigger the size of the model, the more white I'll add in to the first starter coat, if you will. And really it just differs the size of the brushes you use. The bigger the model, the bigger the brush. So I'll lay that paint on once I've mixed it with quite a wide brush. It's pointless using a really fine point to put a base coat on. So I'll mix up something like that, which is not that far off a dark skin tone. If you test it on your own skin and it's a little bit darker, you can't be far off. The good thing is a bit of white spirit will clean it off. So that colour will just go all over his face. Now, this guy's supposed to be a Native American, so you could keep the tones a little bit darker. and just spread that all over. As I said, the oils don't dry particularly fast, so you're going to be able to blend this, mess about with the colours for hours. The whole idea of doing this stage is that you've got a floating surface to add your colours to. It's not dry brushing, you're actually coating the whole thing. I'll hand this round before I go any further. You don't want a thick load of paint because it'll be too hard to change the colours, but you do want a layer of paint on. If I hand that round now quickly, bloodlines, whatever, but no two people really in a group will be the same colour. So why use the same colour all the time?
You take the oil out of the paint or just leave it on your palette?
If I've got a new paint, bear in mind some of these are probably 5-6 years old. I use little bits of card. You can use bits of envelope. Paper plates are good, as long as they're not waxed. And if you put the paint on, if I get a relatively new paint,
it's a standard oil paint.
they're artist oils. I get one that's open. These are that new. Not even open. This one will be a good one because I opened this the other night. There was that much carrier in it, you would not believe. If I put that on there, and we'll leave it while I paint this face, you'll see how much oil carrier comes out on it. You can see that that's fairly liquid there. The card will just soak it out. If you've got new oils, if you do that, go and make yourself a cup of tea, drink it probably, have a biscuit, come back and your oil paint will be usable. The other thing to do on the undercoats, if you're doing clothing particularly and you want really matte effect, into your acrylics add some of the Tamiya flat base. Only need a spot of it. If your undercoat's really matte, that will soak some of the oils in as well. So you've more chance of making the clothing, particularly cotton materials or flax-based materials, you've more chance of making it matte. So just starting this.
Do you not bother with primer?
That's what I've done with that. It's because it's a cream coloured resin, you can get away with just putting a thin mix of those on. I used to just put the oil straight on, but I've started using a primer. As I say, cut it with isopropyl alcohol to thin it down. And it's
use that for Vallejo or Tamiya?
Yeah, your problem with Tamiya colours is that they're more of a shellac base. So if you put 2 or 3 coats on, you'll lift the paint if you use isopropyl, because it actually dissolves the paint. So you only want to put 1 layer on. Starting this, you work out where the highlight's going to be. Now most people talk about this overhead lighting technique. The easiest way to describe it is, you look on top of the model like that, anything you can see there should be highlighted. Anything you look at there should be a deeper shadow. It's a simple concept, but people still get it wrong. Because a lot of people, when they're painting like that, actually highlight the highest part at the front, whereas it should be on the top. So if you look at where I'm laying these bits of white in now, and again I'll hand it round, before I start blending. And again, you're going to do this 3 or 4 times. You only want tiny bits of paint. Probably overstated the fact a little bit, but that is about where you want your highlights. Adding a small amount of paint first, blend it in, then you can add more bits of paint and build the highlights up. You can control where they are. With the oils you can move the paint about. I like the bit where I hand it round because I can have a cup of tea, even though it is coffee. So while you're doing that, a lot of people say about brushes, they use this, they use that. I've tended over the years to use Series 7 Winsor & Newtons. The Brushman, I've got some of his, they're very good. But you don't use those brushes for everything. What you tend to do is you buy them new and you use it for all the fine detail. The Works usually have a cheap bookshop, The Works, usually have a painting section, an art section, or any art shop. You can get cheap brushes and they're as good as anything for laying paint on. For the finer lines, I'm still using an oldish Winsor & Newton Series 7, but for laying the main coat on, fairly wide brush, and I think that was about £1.50. A new Series 7 will cost you about £12.50.
I think it's always better to do faces with oil than acrylic. I've never used oil.
It's whatever you're comfortable with. I can do either. So, well, I'll put it this way. Would you use a hammer for knocking a screw in? So you use what's best tool for the job, and that's all this is, using the best tool. So, might have over-egged the white to make it obvious where I've added highlights, but using a flattish big brush, because it's such a large scale, you can blend these areas in. And I am doing this a little bit faster than normal. Take any excess paint off on an old t-shirt or an old bit of cloth. I tend to use white because over the years when I've used coloured t-shirts, you can get bits of dust and stuff coming off the t-shirt material, and white bits don't show as much. It does get washed regularly, I wouldn't think so, like, but
is that a short bristle brush you're using?
it is.
Have you cut it short?
No, I bought it like this. I can ruin any brush fairly quickly, given half a chance. So that's blended in, and it's not had that much effect, but you'll go through that several stages. I'll hang that round now. Doesn't say a size on that, but it's about a 16th inch flat brush. Fairly soft bristles, and it'll end up fairly shortly looking like that. So Once it goes like that, you use it on even bigger models.
So it's more of a stippling effect you're doing to keep it focused in the air.
Keep the focus and just blend it out to the paint around it. But as you add more white paint, you'll build the highlights up so you can select where your highest points of light are. Usually, because you've got oils in your skin, your highlights will be on the nose, on the ridge of the nose, and probably on the forehead. Cheekbones will get fairly high lighting, and the chin usually needs a bit of work and over here. But your highest points will be across the forehead, down the nose. I reckon if I don't stop, I can get this done in half an hour, usually. People say that oils are slow. They're slow drying. Drying time on that, if I put it in a heated cabinet with a 40 watt bulb, that will be dry probably the next morning, but certainly the next night. It's a good reason for going to work.
So you can come back to it next week?
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. Yeah. So basically I'm using the sculpture, and this comes into what models you buy. If you buy something that's well sculpted, it's going to make your life easy. If you buy something that's badly sculpted, it's going to fight you. One of the best bits of advice I got from a sculptor was, look up his nose. When you buy a bust particularly, look up his nose and look at his cheekbones, and you'll be able to tell whether he's right-handed or left-handed on quite a few sculptures. Because the figure's left-hand side is the easy access for the sculpting tool. The right-hand side is working against himself. So unless he turns it upside down, he's got less access. And what you'll find is, left-hand cheek will be further back. You won't see it when you're looking straight at it. Look up his nose, and it'll be there. If you go home, if you've got any stock of busts and go through them, I guarantee you'll find one or two. And then you'll recognise, oh, that's why it was hard to paint, because you're fighting against the sculpture.
Yeah, I was fine. One eye is better than the other.
Same reasoning. So if I do a couple of blends on this now to build the highlights up so you can see, basically. I don't know whether that's going to show up on the camera. Is that going to focus?
Yep.
Yeah. So again, that blends in.
So is that the same area or a slightly smaller area focusing?
Slightly smaller area. And you'll get used to the fact that
Are you using a dabbing?
yeah, it's sort of a stippling action, but you'll use different areas of the brush, because on the smaller parts like the nasal flares, you can use the edge of the brush. So I'm rushing this a little bit. Do a second lot and just.
So what you're initially doing is toning down that first dark colour you put on with your white.
Yeah. The light is issue of traffic. So if you work on smaller areas, those will naturally build up. And you can start picking the wrinkles out, crow's feet at the corner of the eyes, wrinkles on the forehead, frown lines. I'm giving them a little bit of character. He's looking a bit too Caucasian now, but for the purpose of the demonstration, in this lovely lighting, get the idea.
You mentioned using a bit of red to bring out the colours of the cheeks, the ears, nose. Have you got a particular favourite red for that sort of thing?
Carmine.
Carmine.
Carmine. I'll put my glasses on now, I might be able to see it. So, this is where you can start putting the details in, which is a fine brush. These details will really only be seen by someone who's got a good eye, but you can start building up the finer areas. And making it look a little bit more three-dimensional. Again, what you've got to realise and recognise that it's not necessarily the top of something that's going to get a highlight. If you look at your wrinkles on your forehead, it's actually the bottom of the flap of skin, if you will. If I do that, then it's the underside of each wrinkle, if you will, that catches a highlight. So, thinking about where you're putting the lines of highlight is quite important. About the hardest faces to paint are female fancy, simply because a woman's face is a lot smoother. Get something like this, it's easy to paint. It's got all craggy wrinkles. You just can't go wrong. Whereas with a large flat area, your blending really has to be good. In fact, I'm going to leave that side.
Do you ever go back to your original base if you've just done a bit too far or gone over the wrong area? Can that be used to correct?
It can, but you probably as well getting some white spirit, destroying the evidence, and just going back and starting again. And that again is the beauty of oil paints, that you can just go back and hide the mistakes you've made. Just trying to do one half of the face now, so that you can see how it's developing. Now, some people paint eyes first, some people paint them last. I'm one who paints them last, because I'm not a very tidy painter. Right, so
is
I've gone quiet, haven't I? It's never a good sign.
you mentioned carmine red. Same for the lips and things like that.
I tend to, unless you want really nice blood red lips, I tend to just use a bit more of the Mars brown. I'll show you that in a minute. That is getting there. He has got a bit of a strange bone structure as well, Stevie, I've decided, since I've been painting this. It could be smoother, but he's got quite a craggy face. As you look at it, the right hand side is getting more detailed now. So the wrinkles are starting getting in. The thing about any white paint, it doesn't matter whether it's acrylic, oils, gouache, it's got in it what they call optical brightness. The paint you pick your skirting boards with, same stuff, optical brightness. And what it is, it's a con. Most manufacturers add it into paints to make you think that it's nice and bright and white. The effect is that when you paint your skirting boards and round your doors, it looks really nice and clean, and oh, haven't I done a good job. But the room next to it, that you did about 6 months ago, the paint's gone a bit yellow. Your optical brightness drop out. Now the point here is that's looking really contrasty, and it'll look even more so once the shadows go in. But in about 3 months, the whites will have calmed down. So much so that sometimes you'll have to go back and put a bit more white over your brightest highlights, just to make them pop. The other thing is, depends where you're going to display this, whether it's for certain competitions, whether it's for just your own pleasure, whatever. You paint for yourself, but sometimes, if you know you go in certain places, you know the lighting conditions. If you go into a sports hall, you know that the lighting conditions are going to be poor. I'm keeping that polite. You go to somewhere, if you've been to Euro Militaire, it's a room like this, but about half as wide, and you've got sunlight blasting in, and it just knocks all the highlights and shadows for 6. People who paint models and do well there are basically using really, really harsh contrast, and that's where this is going. To put the shadows in, you can do one or two things. You could let this dry, so you've got it to where you want it to be with highlights. Let it dry, give it a week so it's really, really dried hard, and then you could put shadows over the top, and that won't affect the paint that's under it. If you've got a lot of guts, or if you're doing a demonstration and people are looking at you, so you put your glasses on for a start, and you can add some of the shadows in. I very, very rarely use black at this stage, and black will only be used for the deepest shadows. Did I say shadows before? Highlights? Shadows, that's alright. So I haven't got a script for this. No one wrote one for me.
So is it preferable to let it dry?
It depends how confident you are. The thing is, at this stage, it's going to be easier to blend things in to what you've already got on the model. if you're doing it when it's dry, you're tending to use less paint, probably a little bit of white spirit, and almost like you do a pin wash on a tank. Oh, someone loves me. So again, what you're trying to do is add in darker shadows to make the face come to life. Up to this point, this hasn't looked so clever, I'll be honest with you, in my opinion at least. But once you start adding the shadows, it'll start getting a little bit more where you want it. The favourite part a judge looks at on a figure is under the chin, because you'd be amazed how many people don't paint under there. Again, I'm just trying to do one half of this, really. And then you've got a comparison for how things have been laid in. We're getting there, is all I can say. Again, the right hand side of the face as you look at it has had the shadows added in. Given more time, you can make the blending smoother. That is a bit rough.
The tinting, either for the 5 o'clock shadow or the redness, would you leave that to the very end, do it very thin paint, or?
I'd leave that till it was dry.
To dry.
Yeah. Because if you're using oils then, if you've got too much on, you can wash that off with white spirit and basically get away with starting again. The whole idea is to do this in stages. The more confident you are, the more stages you can complete at once, so the faster it gets. But even when you're up at a high level, you'll tend to add the effects, if you will. Deepest eyeliner, so almost black for that. Your 5 o'clock shadow, your blush on the cheeks, bits under the eyes, green or blue. You'd be surprised how much difference that makes. Just a very thin hint of it. Some of the paint you add will be almost transparent. You won't actually see where it is, but someone looking at it will go, yeah, that looks right. And that's just a case of trial and error. And because of the oils, once this is dried thoroughly, as I say, give it a week, you'll be able to get away with doing all sorts on it and you won't shift the paint you've done so far. Now with acrylics, you can end up staining them. If you put a wash on and then you're stuck, it is a restart the whole process job. With oils, because there's that bit of glossiness on the skin, because you've not got it absolute matte, you've got a little bit more play. And as I said, going out to work is the whole point of painting with oils, because it will dry while you work.
So would you ever put a thin veil or oil paint on a bus that's painted in acrylics?
Yeah.
I think it would
Oh yeah, you can put.
wouldn't stay. We're talking about staining.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to put a suntan on something, there's golden ochre, which is a transparent yellowy brown. That will give you instant spray tan. Thin it down with white spirit, wash it over, and if you thin it down enough, you'll be able to put several layers on to build up your suntan. If it's someone, say Rommel, who's worn goggles in the desert, so he's almost like a panda, he'll have light areas around there, so you can actually paint round and give him that panda look. It's all just adding effects and looking at portraits and seeing what colours, try and break down what colours have been used in certain areas, and you'd be surprised what you can get away with or what you can add on. But that will give you the basics there of what colours. And as I say, that's just using 2 colours to build up a face. I'll show you that. As I say, as you look at it, the right hand side is probably 60 or 70% done. Yeah. So that's that demonstration.
Thank you.